Hello there everyone, and welcome to another Power Rangers theory video. In this video, I am going to be going over a more interesting topic, and this time, it pretty much evolves around the change in the story of a Power Rangers season that already exists. Now, pretty much quite a number of people in the Power Rangers community may have had a number of different theories on what could have been. And this one is going to be quite an interesting one. And that would be, what would happen if Dr. Hinelar's monster form was used for Power Rangers in space? Now, if you happen to have seen Denji Sentai Megaranger, you probably might think that Dr. Hinelar's monster form was never used in Power Rangers in space, or even in Power Rangers at all. For the first half of that, you'd be correct, but for the latter half, you wouldn't be. And here's the reason why. At the very start of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, there is this villain character named Furio. And as it just so happens, Furio is a modified version of Dr. Hinelar's monster form. And you probably are thinking, well, how come Furio is in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, the adaptation of Gingaman, if this costume came from in space? Well, Power Rangers has been known to do quite a lot of hybriding during their show adaptations, such as combining two different Sentais together, or even three, like what had happened during the original era in Mighty Morphin, in which the seasons of Power Rangers happened to be a combination of three different Sentais. There was Kyuranger, which borrowed the suits and main villains, as well as Megazords and monsters. There was Ranger, which was where most of the monsters, the Thunderzords, and the White Ranger suit came from. And there is Ninja Sentai Kyuranger, where the Alien Ranger suits, Rito Revolto, Master Vile, and the new Zords for Season 3 made an appearance. And believe it or not, there actually happened to have been quite a few times in which there were some hybrids between different Sentais, such as taking elements from one Sentai and putting them into the adaptation of another. And in this case, Furio is one of those instances. But the whole point of this video is to think about, if they actually used this costume during Power Rangers in space, what could they have used it for? And here is my theory on what this monster form could have been used for. Now first, let's do a couple of comparisons, shall we? Now, why don't you take a look at Furio? Does he look anything like any of the monsters from in space that we have seen? Well, why don't you take a closer look? Have you figured it out? Well, if you haven't, I'll go ahead and tell you. He happens to resemble Tankenstein. Don't believe me? Here's a side-by-side comparison between the two images, and you can see that they actually happen to have quite a lot of similarities between their bodies. They happen to have similar legs, similar arms, and, well, that's about it. I can't really say the chest is about the same, because it isn't really, and obviously the face is different, but the overall body design seems to be. And that is what I think Dr. Hinelar's monster form could have been used for if they did use it for Power Rangers in space. I believe that what they could have done was actually use Dr. Hinelar's monster form for the first form of Tankenstein. It would make sense considering that it just so happened that they appeared in the same episode of Megaranger, where first Dr. Hinelar appears in his monster form and encounters the Megarangers. Then he changes back into his human form and then goes into the base, which happens to be a spaceship. And then that spaceship gets turned into the Grand I'll put the name on the screen, I can't pronounce it right now. And that basically was what became Tankenstein. Now you might be thinking, well, wouldn't this mean that Tankenstein became a Megazord? Well, in Megaranger, yes. But for Power Rangers in space, he was just another ordinary monster of the week. Kind of like how at the end of Turbo, where the last monster of the week was a monster named Gold Goyle, who was treated as the final monster of the week for Turbo, but in Kyuranger, his counterpart Exhaust was actually the true lead villain of the series. And this was actually the final battle against him. After Exhaust is defeated, that pretty much is the end of the Kyuranger story arc. Everyone is at peace, and the story just ends there, with no continuation to the storyline. Unlike with Power Rangers Turbo, where the story then transitioned to Power Rangers in Space. So that is what I am thinking. Although there is the factor that a lot of footage of Dr. Hinelar in his monster form showed him interacting with what would become the Craterites, which in Power Rangers in Space were some enemy foot soldiers that the Rangers used for training purposes. And as far as I know, I think there was only one episode in which they actually appeared in. However, in Denji Sentai Megaranger, they were actually the enemy foot soldiers that the Megarangers fought against, as opposed to the Quantrons, which were created exclusively for Power Rangers. So this would probably mean that a lot of original footage would have to be filmed in order for the battle to continue out, since a lot of the footage of Dr. Hinelar in his monster form in Megaranger showed him interacting with not only the Craterites, but also with the Megaranger's mentor. And obviously, if it is a human character, usually that human character would be edited out. And I say usually because there have been a few exceptions. So my guess here is that if they did use the costume in such a way, what probably would happen is that they would have new original footage where the Rangers would first encounter Tankenstein in his original form, with them demorphed at first, and then they do morph, and then they fight against Tankenstein, perhaps combine their weapons together like what we saw in the Megaranger episode, blasted him, and he actually does not go down so easily. Now, of course, in Megaranger, this scene would then follow with Dr. Hinelar changing back into his regular form. But for Power Rangers in Space, I'm thinking that what could happen is that after this blast, Tankenstein would then go from this original monster form to this form, which of course is the form that he takes on during the Zord battle. Of course, he isn't Zord size yet. Pretty much what happens is that Tankenstein goes from his Dr. Hinelar monster form to a normal size version of whatever the name here says. But at normal size, and then grows to giant size. And pretty much the battle would probably go the same way as it did in the actual series. So not really much had changed there. Now, I bet some of you are probably thinking, well, Astronema is actually the equivalent of Dr. Hinelar in Power Rangers in Space, so why couldn't this just have been her form? And to that, I don't think it would have worked out. I mean, they probably could have used a different monster costume to do this sort of thing, but I'm not quite sure as to what Monster of the Week from Megaranger could have been a temporary form for Astronema, just as Furio was a temporary form for Dr. Hinelar. So I am thinking that what could have happened is that Dr. Hinelar's monster form could have been used for the first form of Tankenstein. And I bet you are wondering, if Dr. Hinelar's monster form actually was used in Power Rangers in Space for this instant, how do you think Lost Galaxy would be any different? Well, to that, I think that how Lost Galaxy would be different from how it actually went would be, instead of it being Furio that's the Ranger's first encounter, it's Trakina herself. Now you might be thinking, well, Villamax was actually the character who filled Furio's role in Gingaman, so why couldn't he have been there? And to that, I'm going to say that I think I found something online that said that when Power Rangers Lost Galaxy began filming, Japan was filming Megaranger versus Gingaman, and none of the villain costumes from Gingaman were available for Power Rangers at that point in time. So as a result, they had to use what they had available, which of course would be Dr. Hinelar's monster form from Megaranger, along with the US exclusive Stingringers, Trakina, and Scorpius. So I think that if they used Hinelar's monster form for Tankenstein back in Power Rangers in Space, Drakina probably would have appeared as the first enemy the Lost Galaxy Rangers fought against instead of Furio. And the story wouldn't really be any different from that apart from Furio not being there, because there just simply was no costume for him. Now, I suppose Drakina probably could have been the one to fill in the role that was given to Furio in any of the episodes that he appeared in, although they probably could have had Trecheron serve as the first general at this point in time. He would just be filling in the gaps that would need to be covered by both Sambash, who is Villamax's counterpart, and to some extent Furio's as far as personality goes. In fact, Sambash is actually more like Furio than he is Villamax, at least personality-wise. And then probably that's just how the rest of Lost Galaxy would go. Drakina would be the first one the Rangers would encounter. She probably would either be the threat in all of the episodes Furio appeared in, or Trecheron would have filled these roles. And the rest of the season probably would have just played out the same as it did in the actual show that we got. But if you do not think that Furio's costume could have been used in this manner for Power Rangers in Space, I'd like to hear what you think. How do you think Dr. Hinelar's monster form could have been used for Power Rangers in Space? Do you think it could have been a temporary form of Astronema? Do you think it could have been the first form of Tankenstein? Or something completely different? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Hey there guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more videos from me, click on any of the video links that show up on the screen. And also feel free to subscribe to my channel, and if you can, share this video on all your social media if you can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.